intensity. She has created her poems out of moonlight and crow shadow, burned orchard and snow-covered road, out of grit, wind, and honey. Theirs is a fabric studded with losses and threaded through with love. She has crossed the mountains to share some of them with us today. Please join me in welcoming Brooke Matson.
I want to thank Christine and John again for having us here. I was telling Dorothy it reminds me of when I was in London. They have a poetry library, and I wasn't a citizen of Great Britain at the time, so I couldn't check out the books, but I would go there periodically and just sit and pull random books off the shelf and kind of flip through them, and that was my dose of poetry for the week. And it's a real pleasure to read with you, Dorothy. I got to read Dorothy's book over the last month, and I really felt a kindred spirit in that, just the focus of your poetry and the connection with nature is something that, I don't know, I really felt like I identified with that. So, and thank you all for coming. My book is called The Moons. I have a lot of poetry that mentions moon or focuses around the moon, and I'll talk a little bit about that as I go through. This first one is called Crow Moon, and it's the first poem of the book. Each feather hides a song, darker than death, and if this night you were within reach, she would bury herself between your ribs, a soft home in your earth, where all would be warm and quiet, and your palms would flame with her dark shape, the universe inside you, beneath layers and layers of shawls. She is tired of being herself. She would like to be someone else. If you love her, do not make it easy for her to open wide the hinges of your chest and hang herself inside. For over the years together, you may suddenly reach for her and clasp only the hollow inside yourself, a plot of sand and feathers where a heart should be. And you would feel for the first time what a woman feels, to carry something inside herself, blood heavy, and so much broader than the edges of the body or the borders of a sheet. And forget it lay there until dark, when it billowed with the quiet, the space where she buried herself. Across universe inside you, for what else is a heart but a womb inside the earth, or a room in a prayer that grows and grows? If you love her, do not make it easy for her. Let her cry for a bed to burn in and wrap herself in sheets till morning. I'm gonna read some love poems tonight. It's fall, so I suppose that's the emotional time of year with the sunlight leaving. I do have seasonal affect disorder. If you live in Seattle and have that, you are braver than I am. So I think a lot of my poetry with the moon, and actually I didn't really realize this until after I published the book under that title, but I really do feel that connection with the moon, and that it takes the light from the sun and just reflects it and disappears when the sun's light isn't there. And I kind of feel like I do that throughout the year. I kind of go through my phases, and every spring I open up my journals and I'm like, who wrote all this dark poetry in my journals, and why are their metaphors better than mine? And so I get some of my poetry that way, is kind of coming out of the fog and looking back and going, wow, what was that? So this next one's called November. Moisture hangs on the morning chill like diamonds upon the ear of November, and every exhalation, every word you speak shimmers into crystals, a sign to Canada geese not yet flown, that soon their necks and eyes shall turn to glass and white satin gloves that cannot love you. It has taken evolutions just to open my hands, to let my atoms arrange a space of mirrors where everything inside is mine. Each desired word I wear about the wrist, the neck, but love, we are not there yet. And love, 1,000 miles of ice, starless winter skies, and even one night may not be yours. This is another moon poem. I have two that are called phases, so this is phases 2. The moon wears white and waits for me at every corner of the night, where she lays down her sewing, rises, and begins to fall slowly in distress, one black feather at a time. In winter she waits at every window of the house, a pale shell of sun, gathering the dark into braids, something beautiful to pass the hours in her chair. If one of us is swollen with memory, the other is new and can become whatever she wants. Whichever one is waxing, the other grows thin and sharp, a knife to warn the other when she wakes. Whichever one is dreaming, the other sows despair. Do not ask who, but one is counting the leaves as they fall. The other is cutting strands of her hair. I used to have a lot of insomnia. I'm getting better at that. I've learned that if you work out enough, you're so tired you just fall asleep. So that's my new strategy. But in college I had a lot of trouble falling asleep, and so I spent a lot of time at my window with the moon. This one's called Summer. 3 nights I wound slowly around the room with the shadows. For 2 nights after, I drank myself to sleep when the others had gone to Seattle for baseball. This morning I watered the garden. I take the kitchen scissors and snip the heads off all the roses, the grass blotted with bright stones, dark beats of a heart, lips still wet. The less tattered I lay on the steps of the back door. The cry of a crow fades into the sun's brightness. And though dizzy, I vow to cut out the tongue of the next thing I murder. Louise Glick is a huge inspiration for me. I love her book, The Wild Iris. I love all her poetry, but The Wild Iris especially was really profound for me when I read it the first time. So I love how she takes unique perspectives of things in nature, and so I get inspired that way too. This is called Star Magnolia, which I love magnolias. They're my favorite flower. And there's so many different varieties, but star magnolias have these beautiful star-like flowers that just incredible. Okay, Star Magnolia. I want to believe I was loved. Yet I have stood here in falling snow for 3 long months, wondering where you are. I have dreamed beneath these snows, imagining the white cold upon me was love's wedding to pain, that soon the moon would be near, not far, if only I could persevere. April is half over, not a word from you. Don't be mistaken, I am not surprised, and I will hold these 10,000 stars until the wind lifts them from my fingers.